The title of the lecture is Ethics of Pharmaceutics and Clinical Trials. Content. And learning objectives. Let us start with this title in one of our newspapers in Egypt, that Obama is apologizing for unethical clinical trials in Guatemala where they inject intentionally 700 people with syphilis and gonorrhea to study the effect of penicillin. This is in 30s and Obama was in just the last few years. They apologizing for unethical treatment or unethical behavior in African population after 70 years. So, what is the purpose of research study? Why you make research? You are either collecting data for regular or irregular events, conditions, populations, or you are testing a theory for observation or medication, and ultimately at the end you will understand better. The research study is classified into observations, where you are compared a study group and a control group. You are just collecting data and analyze this data to reach the outcome of your study. Or it is analytical study, which is called an experimental also, where you are studying certain therapy or treatment or equipment, okay, and you have a control group to your study. The last one is considered the true experimental study, which is called the clinical trials, where you are studying something new, brand new. What are clinical trials? We are trying in clinical trials to answer a question, either for treatment of certain disease that we are not knowing any treatment to it until now, or to prevent certain disease, or to diagnose certain disease. The clinical trial is not something new. It is known for very, very long time. And the recorded trial starting 1747 with Linz, he is a ship surgeon. He found that many of their sailors had scurvy, okay, and he find if they take orange or lemon or vitamin C, they are cured. This is the first trial recorded in the modern era. Of course, there is a trial before that many years ago, but maybe it's not recorded. We have also Alexander Fleming, who is started treatment with penicillin, and many others. Okay, when we start to consider research ethics, it is started after the Second World War, where a group of scientists has been gathered in a country or a small town called Nuremberg in Danish. They put what we called a doctor's trial. Why they do that? Because during the Second World War there is a violation of research ethics all over the world. They are trying deadly substance over population without their knowledge, and they kill a lot of people under the name of trials. After that, several ethics guidelines has been evolved, like Nuremberg Code, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Declaration of Helsinki, Bellman Reports, CIOMS or SIOMS, International Ethics Guideline of Biomedical Research, and so on. And many of these has been updated like Declaration of Helsinki. Okay, whenever you are designing a clinical trial, you have many elements to be uh, taken care of, like who is the human subject you will be involving, what is the control group, what is their criteria, the method has been used, the preparation by reviewing the existing scientific data. The clinical trial design may be randomized. This means you are selecting your patient without specific criteria or without controlling their criteria. And there is non-randomized group where you are choosing your patients, uh, like patient with hepatitis C grade 1 or 2, okay? And the rest of the patient, you are not taking this patient in your study. The pilot study, you are choosing certain population to see if your study can be continued or not. There is what we call a blinded study, where the patient doesn't know what is the exact drug you are giving to him. And why we are doing this? Because we are waiting from the patient to tell us what he is specifically feel. For example, if he understand or if he hear that certain drugs has causing nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle pains, muscle aches, okay, and you are giving him placebo and he complaining from that placebo. Placebo means usually no drugs, usually like this. Okay, so he is, let us say, he is um, faking, or he is assuming this manifestation, or he is psychically manifest. It's not a true manifestation. And there is what we call a double-blinded study where we have the patient and the doctor doesn't know what is the drugs given. Okay, it is just by color, blue or red or something like this. And this is to avoid the bias of some doctor towards certain drugs. And we have also a placebo. Placebo means no drug, no active drug constituents. Sometimes we can use placebo, like if we have a mild condition for hypertension. Okay, we can control diets and versus treatment, and within controlling diet, we are telling the patient we are giving him a specific medication, which is a placebo. It is not drug, but you are at the same time controlling his manifestations. Placebo sometimes can be an active ingredient. What is the best treatment for cancer? Let us say stomach cancer. What is the best treatment available? We are trying the new medication with the active form, or with an active best standard available treatment. At that time, this best standard treatment is called placebo. What are the phases of clinical trial? Before we are going to experiment on patients, we should experiment on animals. Okay, this is first. Then, whenever it is safe and yielding a good results in animals, we are going to try these drugs over the patient. We have 4 phases of clinical trial. The first phase, it's usually very small group, 20 to 80 patients. It is gathered to test the safety of the drug and its side effect and the dose range. Okay, so we cannot use patients in this condition, because if you are searching beside the safety, the escalation of dosage of that drug, and if there is side effect, if you have a patient, you wouldn't know is it the effect of the drug, if the patient suffering from any complication, or it is the effect of his disease. So we are gathering healthy volunteers, okay. It is done, of course, under an extreme controlled conditions, but still we can have fatalities in this group, because we don't know the safety of that. In the second phase, we are now knowing that this drug is safe, and we are let us say have an approximate dosage range for that drug, and we are knowing some of its side effects. So we are taking a larger group of patients, okay, it is 100 to 300 patients, just to see the effectiveness of that drug on that disease, to monitor further side effects, and still we are evaluating the safety, but it is to a lesser degree for that patient, because we are already know from the phase 1 it is safe. In the third stage, we are treating a large group of patients, maybe up to 3,000 patients, to fulfill all of the objective of phase 2, as regards the side effects, as regards the effectiveness on the disease, okay, and monitor the physiological outcome. At the same time, is to compare that new drug with what is standard for that disease in the community, or what is available treatment for that disease. The last phase is called phase 4. It has been post-marketed. Post-market means we are now sure it is safe, effective for my patients, so I will put the drug in the market. So millions of people will use it. Okay, still I need to follow up these drugs for unknown side effects. For example, some drugs has bad effect if they are given to patient with certain deficiencies of certain enzymes, or the races have an effect on certain drug, as whenever it is given to specific race, they have a bad side effects, or has no effects at all. For example, I will give it to you. Whenever there is a starting of the treatment of hepatitis C, certain drugs give an excellent medication and excellent effect for population in North America. Okay, whenever in Egypt they use that drug, it is not effective at all. They found that we have a genetic difference, so a specific drug needed to um, be more effective, or to be effective with our genetic material. We have several types of clinical trials. As I told you before, we have treatment trial when you are using a new treatment or new combination of drugs or radiotherapy or specific surgery. Okay, we are testing all the steps, as I told you, from phase 1 to phase 4. Okay, we have a prevention trials, and sometimes we have a disease which is pandemic or endemic, or another diseases like cancer. We want to know what is the risk factors, okay, what is provoking this disease for these patients. So we are searching not a new medication, but what is the risk factors, what is something that can be used to diminish the evolving of this disease, like vitamins, like vaccination and changing of lifestyles. The third type is called a detection or screening or diagnostic clinical trials, where we are searching what is the best method to detect early cancer or to detect early disease. Okay, like blood tests, like genetic tests, like mammogram, and so on. This will help us for developing better tools to classify types and phases of cancer or managing patient care, and this is a diagnostic trial. We have a quality of life, or improving the quality of life. For example, if the patient had a quadriplegic disease, okay, we can have specific tools like computers, like machines that can help him to slightly move or help him to produce sounds, to talk. Okay, they can provide them with a water mattress to prevent his source, yes, or his bed ulcers. Okay, so this is to improve the quality of life in certain patients. And we have genetic trials. This can help us in detection, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment of certain diseases. Okay, let us move to another point. What is code of ethics in pharmaceutical companies? You know that if you have a clinic, or you are staying in a hospital, you are doctor hospitals, and suddenly you have a medical representative coming to your office and saying, I have a very good medication, you can use it for your patients, okay, and you can ask what is the difference with other medication. He can give you pamphlet for this, he can give you some free samples, but also he can giving you luxurious gifts, monies, hospitalities, tickets for some place which is good. Okay, you can spend with your family few days. Okay, and for this you should try this medication for your patient until he has specific let us say specific outcomes. He should have a specific target by selling this medication to a specific number of patients. In this condition, you will have a conflict of interest. Okay. As regards the industry, for profit, they seeking to maximize their drug sales. Okay. And at the same time, is it a problem of trusting? We have a professional values. We have ethical principles. Is this drug is really beneficial to my uh, patients, and is this drug is over beneficial than others, and I can write it even if it is more expensive or to less expensive, and so on. This arrangement, okay, is usually, if you are agreeing to take these benefits from that drug companies, it is unethical. It is less trustworthy. Drug company have the right to try to convince you and the patient that you need this drug. Sometimes it is less benefit, they have an adverse effect, and sometimes the patient is not paying for the drug, but your nation, but your uh, country is paying for this. Health knowledge also can be distorted by views and models of disease that sell the most drugs. Is it true or false? Let us think about it. Today we know that depression, for example, is caused by the deficiency of serotonin in the brain, and we should restore normal serotonin levels. It is widely believed by both physicians and patients, but it's not completely true because it is one element in the process of depression. Is it an industrial conspiracy? The drug industry is not only a part of the puzzle. The public demand for fixing our mortality, our morbidities, preferring to take pills rather than do the hard work of lifestyle changes. And as regards medicine, demand for certainty. Don't just stand there, do something. So what is your responsibility as as a physician? Say no to the gift because it is a sort of bribery, except in certain conditions like a sample of drug. Resume your role to uh, advise the patient for his health. We should regain public trust. We should work with our government to reclaim integrity of medical research and journals. Okay, let us move to another point. Just to remind you with our four uh, basic principles in research, which is beneficence. Whatever you are doing is you are doing for your benefit of the patient, and you should do no harm to the patient, or what we call the non-maleficence. The autonomy means the right of your patient to take a decision in his own treatment, even if it is against your medical advice or against the family wishes. And be fair. So whenever you are included in a clinical trial or some company come and say you will be a principal investigator, please try my new drugs for on your population. You should have the following documentation, and I will explain each at a time. You should have what we call an investigator brochure, study protocol, informed consent, case report for source documents, clinically study. What is the study protocol? It is a plan on clinical trial. It has a background, aim, material methods or subject methods. It should be reviewed by ethics committee or institutional review board. It is prepared by the sponsor also. And any change in the data should be supplied as an amendment to the ethics committee and to the investigator. The informed consent provided usually in the language of the country, and it should be a mirror image to the initial informed consent because sometimes certain companies change the informed consent from country to country according to, let us say, according to the demands of that country. Okay, so seek the demands, best demands for your population. The informed consent containing in a simple form the introduction, the aim, the material method, what is the risk for the patient, what is the benefit for the patient. What is the case report form? It is collected study data. They taking the data from the patient, from the drug's effect and effectiveness, side effects, and so on. It is prepared by the sponsor and it is put in an organized matter. This data has been used to be analyzed, monitored, and and can be included in the final report. What is the source documents? Include subject medical records. What is the medical records? Okay, the hospital discharge summary, the specialist and the nurse notes. Confidentiality must be considered. You should have also what we call a safety report, which is reporting the adverse effects on each patient all over the world, not only in your country, but all over the world. They should supply you with this. So, who is the sponsor? It is usually a pharmaceutical company or a group of companies or researchers. They provided you with funds, with money. And according to science, there should be an ethical justification and scientific validity of research. The ethical review committee or institutional review boards should weighing out what is benefit and what is the risk for the subject involved in the research. They should protect the vulnerable population like children, like women, okay, pregnant women, okay. Whenever you are supplying an informed consent, it should be there should be what we call an enough information to your patient. It is not just you are involved in a research. No, you should give him an information about the details of that research. Also, in these science guidelines, there is an obligation to sponsor of the sponsor and the investigator. You are responsible. There is usually what we call an inducement to participation, which means encourage the patient to join the research. In this science guidelines, they help you and making you learning how to choose your control according to the research. There is equal distribution between risk and benefits, and you should seek the confidentiality of all records. And if you are a patient involved and you have a side effect or injury from your clinical trial, you have the right for treatment and compensation. So what is the responsibility of the sponsor? The sponsor initiating, managing, and finance all the trial. He is responsible for recruitment of a qualified investigator and supplying them with tested products as well as their investigational brochure. They ensure compliance with regulation and study requirements. Also, they are responsible for updating the data, monitor the trial at the site, ensuring that all the data are collected. You, as an investigator, you should be qualified. You should have sound knowledge about the drug and the protocol. You should be working according to GCP, Good Clinical Practice Guides. What is your responsibility as an investigator? You knowing what is GCP, you are following the protocol of the study, you are following the regulations, you are responsible for the study at the site, the place where you are doing this study. You are responsible for training for your helping staff. You are responsible for submitting all the protocols and amendments and investigation brochures and all the reports to the ethics committee. You are responsible for the availability of facilities and equipment and for data collection, for taking the informed consent from the patient after explaining everything to him, for reporting the serious adverse events. What is the ethics and responsibility of the monitors? The monitor is the one who are considered a chain or a contact point between the investigator and the sponsor. They should have regular interval to your site and to see if you are committed to the protocol and regulation given by the sponsor, ensuring that you are collecting data appropriately, and they are responsible also for protection of humans. So, whenever there is a clinical trial, there is a sponsor, which is a company usually, there is the investigator, it is you as a physician, and there is a monitor, which is the third party. He is responsible for monitor your work and what you are doing, okay? And there is fourth party, which is the IRB, Institutional Review Board of Institutional Ethics Committee. This group of people, it is usually inside the institution or inside the Ministry of Health. It's according, if you have a university, it is inside the university. They are responsible for protection of patients and their rights. This is the main action. Their main action is to protect these patients and protect this vulnerable population. They should approve or disapprove the clinical trial. This is before the starting on doing this clinical trial. They are also responsible for supervision of the study. They are part of monitoring as the monitors. Okay? They are not the monitors. We have two groups to monitor. The IRB to monitor that you are committed to your protocol submitted and approved by its people, and you are not violating your patients. At the same time, you have a monitors from outside to be sure that you are committed to the protocol. These RB are responsible for receiving complaints from the patients and to know who can participate in a clinical trial. This should be guided by what we call an inclusion and exclusion criteria to have a reliable results. Before going what is informed consent in clinical trial, I will give you an example. Uh, if you have four patients or four groups of patients, a patient with mild hypertension, with patient with moderate hypertension, patient with severe hypertension, patient with severe hypertension and complication. And you are trying a new drug, okay? If you take the mild group only and you give them your medication, antihypertensive drug, and you find a marvelous outcome, you are going there and say, I found the best drug ever for antihypertensive. But if you are trying to have some patients from each group, your drug may be working marvelously with the first group, but not with the second, or not with the third, or not with the fourth. So the right outcome, you will say this drug is good for only mild condition. So the inclusion and exclusion criteria for your patients will affect your outcome. I hope this is a clear example. So let us start a new point. What is should be included in the informed consent of clinical trial. The first, you should know that it is an obligation from the doctor, but not a contract from the patient. This means he can leave you at any time. This is number one. Number two, it should contain all the information available for you as a doctor and should be known by the patient. It should contain an introduction, objectives, what is the aim of this trial. It should be voluntary. Don't deceive your patient to join this trial. It should be written in an understandable language. It should be informative. There is a lot of information about the risk, about the benefit, about the treatment, about the compensation, about the complication, and so on. And it should be given by a competent person. It should be an adult, sane. Adult means over 18 years old in our country, and this is variable from country to country. And it should be sane, and it should be conscious. And there must be a statement said that it is a research, not a sort of treatment. You are involved in a research, and he can accept or deny this. This is a form of an informed consent and how it should be written. Okay, this is the title, the place, this is the risk, the benefit from this study. It is detailed, what is the precautions, okay, what should be done, how many times he will come into you, the side effects of the drug. It is a research and it is effect on genetic form, and usually it is a statement about there is unknown risk because we are under trials. It is not very known or well-known drug. And there is names, signatures, uh, lawyer if it is needed, and a witness. So consent in experimentation, it is very important issue for human subject. There is consent for experimentation. Ethical principles should be benefiting your patient. And until the modern period, that the notion of rational and systemic experimenting in medicine for the purpose of the gaining knowledge emerged as a dominant principle to separate the medical experiment from medical treatment. We should be clear in this. The modern period has produced the emphasis on the individual freedom and self-determination, which is the root of the principle of the consent. So, in summary, there must be statement about it is a research, what is the purpose of the research, what is the procedures used, the risk and discomfort for the patient, the expected duration needed by the participant to join your trial or research, the procedure description, all the benefit for the patient, a disclosure to appropriate alternative procedures if any, and this is should be written, a statement describing the extent of confidentiality of the record. Are you going to making these completely secret all the time or until certain numbers of years? If there is more than minimal risk, an explanation to compensation and treatment for injury or side effects should be written. Explanation of whom to contact to answer the question about the research and the subject, and if he is distressed or no to or he is eager to know certain information, and a statement that this participation is voluntary, refusal is accepted, there is no loss of benefits, there is no punishment or penalty whenever they are leaving this experimentation. Uh, the investigation responsibility in taking the informed consent before the beginning of the study. And he should sit with his patients and explaining all these particles, and it should be done in the first contact between the investigator and the patient. As regard the ethics committee, it should be informed of who gets the informed consent, how it is getting, uh, what is the time given to the patient to think about this consent and about these procedures. There must be a time between giving the information and signing this consent to think and to share with his family. Uh, and they have the right, as an ethics committee, to change the item of informed consent according to the patient's protection if they see they need certain protection by writing certain statements, and it is obligating to the sponsor. And if you are giving money to the patient, it should be informed to, it should be written, and the ethics committee should be informed. It is part of their money. The sponsor is responsible also for the safety of the patient and commitment to the preservation of the rights of the patients, and he is responsible also that the ethics committee is approving everything before the beginning of trials. The main function of ethics committee, as I told you, is protection of the patient and the vulnerable, and we consider children, mentally impaired individuals like um, have dementia or have mental affection, prisoners, or certain condition like students, subordinate, okay, pregnant women, patients. We considered all of these are vulnerable populations, and they should be protected by ethics. How about how about illiterate subjects? Can they be enrolled in the study or not? Okay, they can be enrolled in the study if they are competent. This means they can understand benefit, risk, approve and disapprove. They can take a decision, okay, and they can sign for the approval after reading the informed consent details to them. Sometimes we have to include children in research because some disease doesn't come to adults, okay. The diseases are for children. Okay, so you have to involve children in some research. We are taking two parts. We are taking informed consent from their guardian, and at the same time, we have what we call an assent. Assent. This means you are telling the child what is going on. Okay, to be understandable. And sometimes one signature from one parent is not enough. Sometimes we need the signature of two parents in the risky trials. Okay, if the child is before or below age of 7, written assent is not required. If it is 7 to 13, written assent is preferred to be taken. Okay, okay. If it is between 14 and 17, written assent must be taken. If there is minimal risk and the trial is for the benefit of the child, one signature from one parent is enough. If it is risky trials, or this trial is not benefiting the patient, for example, it is a diagnostic trial. If they know that certain genes in that child provoking certain disease, so it is not a treatment trial. Okay, it is just diagnostic. In this condition, we need the signature of both parents. There is some exception of consent, like emergency. Okay, if the investigator and another physician signing that it is an emergency condition or a life-threatening situation, and there is no time to communicate, and there is no other person with the patient, or there is no time to take a consent from ethics committee, there is no time for informed consent, okay, and it is a life measuring situation. If there is no independent physician, the investigator must provide all documents for assessment within 5 days to independent doctor, and all these steps and documents should be provided to ethics. So what is the benefit of clinical trial? Why you are joining as a patient or as a healthy volunteer this clinical trial? We are taking an active role in healthcare process. We are gaining access to new research treatment in certain conditions where there is no treatment for our disease. We can obtain expert medical care or fine medical care, and at the end we are helping others by contributing to medical research. Of course, there is risk all the time. We are exposed to side effects. Sometimes there is no effective treatment. Sometimes there is death to certain patients or certain volunteers. Uh, At the Garda protocol, it may require more of their time and attention than would be a non-protocol treatment, including trips to study sites, more treatments, hospital stays, or complex dosage requirements. And here we have some cases to you. Just read it carefully. Okay, you can see in these cases what is ethical and what is not ethical. Here we have the ethics of clinical trials and experimentation and research in لائحة أدب المهنة. It is written in Arabic for Arabic speaker population. If you read it, this will make you understand easily. And here we are just informing you that whenever you are violating the confidentiality of your patients, okay, in certain conditions, and if there is any harm to your patients, okay, you will be punished by the civil laws, Article 310, by imprisonment from 6 months, or there is a fine um, for about 500 pounds. This is in Egypt, and each country will have its uh, civil laws and criminal. So how do you find out about clinical trial? If you want to join, you can search for these websites. You can ask the nearby colleges. This is the most common. Okay, and these are our references for the lecture, and there is some links for more mentioned and what books to read. Because it's very important subject, and thank you very much.